I have spent my life searching for the answers that my father and my father's father failed to find. What's the history of video games? Why did they create the high-tech consoles that litter our planet? How did they harness G-Fuel, the life energy of every gamer? What is their purpose and how did they come to be? I have asked the plants, but they do not remember. The plants have asked the rocks, but the rocks do not recall. Even the rocks do not recall. Since no one knows the answer anymore, I made up a completely fictional story for that matter. Everything began with what gamers would call the ultimate day 1 patch of the universe, the release date of Earth in its alpha version. The first game to ever exist was obviously Ark: Survival Evolved. How else would you explain the OG game assets of long deceased mobs that were made obtainable with the archaeology patch? Ark featured a variety of different unused models for Yoshi. Rumors have it that those creatures had the worst AI of all other creatures that would soon come to exist. So it was that their neural network was often just the size of a walnut, which led to aggressive behavior. Luckily, at the same time there was a divine tournament held in the heavens above. Some gods were fighting over who gets to be the lead developer. In the end, Kratos, the god of war, won the battle. But turns out he was a little too good at the game and accidentally got a 30 kill streak, with which he unlocked the Call of Duty nuke, which fell down on the overworld and nuked all the prehistoric Yoshis away. However, some mobs, apparently those who had maxed out either their defense or luck skill tree, somehow managed to survive Kratos' nuke attack. Speculations have arisen that Kratos must have felt sorry for wiping out almost the whole server, and so he decided to release a patch to the current state of Earth, which led to several upgrades to its inhabitants. For example, they were now able to grow stronger and evolve, and thus marks the beginning of the age of Pokemon. Magikarps received the ability to evolve into Gyarados, and monkey-like Pokemon evolved into trainers. These trainers were still in their earliest version, so they didn't resemble our modern day trainers much. Instead, they were very hairy and stupid. They probably didn't have too many options in the character creation menu at that time. Still, they were smart enough to eventually figure out the crafting, building and mining system. And so they began to place down their workbenches, craft tools, bows, spears and something called a flint and steel. With those tools they dug up dirt to build those certified dirt huts, or mine holes into mountains to create caves to live in. With bows and spears they began to hunt other evolved Pokemon like those famous mammoths, whose primal cries you could hear from far, and maybe some Snorlaxes, because of their tender meat. They cooked that meat over the first spell they had unlocked, Fire. Fire could be casted using those earlier hinted about flint and steels. Those trainers, or otherwise referred to NPCs of the earliest version, had made a very odd choice to put all of their XP points into the intelligence stat rather than strength or defense, which made them very vulnerable to most other mobs. To combat that issue, one particularly smart guy named Sid Meier founded the concept of civilization.
I am Sid Meier, and I say, make civilization. Ooga booga.
NPCs began to build their houses close to each other, enslave passive mobs for resources and research economics. Eventually, civilization rose and thrived. Those old-timer NPCs began to upgrade themselves and came up with several new patches to their race. They crafted clothing, expanded their neural network and began to trade something like emeralds for something like carrots. Some civilizations though had better access to better resources than others, so other civilizations began to grow increasingly jealous of them. They now began to spend some research points into the warfare skill tree. However, other civilizations took notice of that and began to spend their research points as well. Quickly, they began building walls to protect them from sieges and catapults to tear them down again. This marked the beginning of the era of those with dark souls, who wanted to rule over everything. Quickly, civilization became kingdoms. NPCs were split in either the peasant or the knight class, but everyone was under the rule of a single Elden Lord. Elden Lords were the most wanted player class, but only one per kingdom could obtain that class. And he who did commanded everyone else. So, the Elden Lord often sent out his knights to fight on totally accurate battlegrounds in order to reach the top rank of the regional leaderboard. Meanwhile, the ones with the peasant class were still around the kingdom under the stars, while there was dew on the grass in the valleys.
Listen, I tried, okay?
They were responsible for providing the kingdom with food. After some decades of this lifestyle, around the year, or in other words anno 1800, NPCs began to wonder when and what the next patch would be.
Fair maiden, pray tell, when does the next great patch be unveiled upon?
Good sir, would that I knew!
Some of them wondered if the constant battling may have something to do with the non-existing story progression.
Mayhap it lingers for a want of a story progression.
Hey, got you any wizard's dust?
So, they began to start a revolution against the hierarchy and establish democracy, or at least in some regions of the map.
Does no one here have some wizard's dust?
Instead of fighting all the time, they now spent more research points into actual research than ever before. And so, they were able to construct bigger houses.
Boy, that's a big fucking house.
Out of cheaper and better construction materials.
And it's made out of better and cheaper crafting materials.
Apparently those with the richest homes were called Sims. People also began to wonder what's behind the horizon. Zero Dawn. So they built ships with skulls and bones on their flags to sail beyond it. On some ships were assassins under a black flag. On others there were thieves of the seas. And on yet other ships there were probably also Yakuza pirates too.
But only in Hawaii though.
Behind the horizons, the sailors found previously unknown regions of the map, like America, Europe, Asia, Ice Wall 1 and Ice Wall 2, Africa, where their national game was Don't Starve Together, and the Dead Zone. Some called it the Green Hell because of its dangerous wildlife lurking in the forests. But as the regions, or otherwise referred to as continents of the map, became aware of the others, they decided to hold another tournament arc to see who claims first place on the global leaderboard. For that, each continent apparently sent their armies out to the first battlefield, so Battlefield 1. Each army was led by one of their strongest fighters. Europe sent a Tomb Raider called Lara Croft. Asia sent a yellow mouse with rosy cheeks called Pikachu. America sent Master Chief. Africa sent a samurai named Yasuke. And Australia sent another animal warrior, Crash the Bandicoot. A total war broke out. Turns out, the global leaderboard was a bullshit idea, and no one won anything in the end. After the big smash, they once again rather focused on downloading the next big patch, so they invested into research again. What they came up with were factorios, in which they could mass produce a lot of things, and bigger houses, called skyscrapers. These would form the city skylines. Everything went great until Short Mustache Man was born and immediately began the next World War, and the world gained the Steam tag Bullet Hell. There was an operation called Wolfenstein to stop this evil man, but that was totally unnecessary, as meanwhile overseas in America, Vault-Tec crafted another spell of humanity called the Atom Bomb. After about 85 million NPCs were wiped off the servers, those lucky enough to react within 60 seconds as the bombs dropped retreated into their vaults and survived. However, the outside was now a wasteland. The world had suffered a total fallout. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 67. The world was on its rim. Russians became stalkers and Asians were probably doing something too. And they were also probably calling it Kenshi. I don't know, I don't speak the language. While everyone was safe inside their bunkers, waiting for the world to reset itself to an earlier safe state, some were still wandering around outside. Such, for example, was an evil sorcerer named Zarok, who made an attempt to cast a spell which would reawaken all the dead, but he accidentally also revived a skeleton named Sir Daniel Fortescue, who was already long dead since the medieval era, who apparently had a problem with that and went to murder him right away, undoing his spell. Another brave soldier who survived the bombs because he was simply too angry to die fought demons and deathclaws outside, along with a blue gun wielding GoPro, while everyone else was still inside, oblivious to the ultra kill and doom happening above. After another few years, however, people had enough of sitting in their bunkers for all this time and went to touch some grass again. Turns out that all this radiation had turned the corpses all around into the living dead again. The dead were rising. Even on some remote dead island there were probably zombies. It was time to unturn this happening and start another World War Z. For this period of time, when the alives were fighting the dead, they introduced a new kind of calendar. They decided to pause the original chronology and instead began the Z chronology. It was really simple. They basically counted the day, put a day after the number and ended it with another Z. So for example, 1 day Z, 2 day Z, 3 day Z. They didn't have much time to really think this through, so it's still in early access. Well, however, once we overcame that period, we had cell phones. But some idiot decided to use this to play Plague Inc. on it and release the coronavirus upon the whole world, which forced everyone to stay back inside for an extended period of time again. Humanity, now locked behind doors again, were bored out of their minds, and so many turned on the TV and watched sports like Wii Sports, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, Tekken, Street Fighters, Guilty Gear, Brawlhalla, chess or Rocket League. After another few years, after everything had died down again and everyone was doing fine, we arrived at our present time, 2025. I guess in the future we will have some more mass effects on something and we will probably go all cyberpunk, get overrun by metalheads and will have to hope for Jack and Dexter to save our future or something. But I wouldn't know. I simply enjoy playing video games and doing YouTube. LOL.